One of the other international stories we're watching is Russia's Navy dealing today with disaster. A fire has killed 14 sailors on board a top-secret deep-sea research submersible, one that is reportedly nuclear-powered. Now, the defense ministry says there are survivors, but is not saying how many. Our Moscow correspondent Chris Brown has the very latest.
Well, it is very big news here this morning. All of the major papers are leading with it. Smoke under the water. This says as Vestia crew members fight gallantly for their lives to the very end. That's just a sample, but all of the big papers are running with this. We've also seen Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, meeting with Vladimir Putin. Mr. Shoigu's version of this is that this is an underwater research vessel, that it was doing deep water research at the time of this accident within Russia's territorial waters.
Donald Trump taking heat for what he's planning for tomorrow, the 4th of July. Trump is being accused of doing something none of his presidential predecessors have done, and that is turn a nonpartisan national holiday into one big political rally. In our bureau in Washington this morning, Arthi Pohl with more on the plan for tomorrow. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. And you're absolutely right. A lot of critics are up in arms about how Donald Trump has changed this year's Independence Day festivities. Typically, you do not see the president addressing the nation from the National Mall on this particular holiday, and it's not a televised address during prime time. But this year, he's added that twist in. And aside from that speech from the commander-in-chief, he also very much wants to embody that role of commander-in-chief, and there will be a grand military parade with tanks, armored vehicles, and really a display of the military might of the U.S. military. And so
dozens of bodies are hauled out of a migrant detention centre in the suburbs of Tripoli. It's the most reported casualties in a strike since forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive on the capital 3 months ago. On Monday, Haftar's Libyan National Army, the LNA, warned it would begin heavy airstrikes.
The Air Force aims to destroy the combat capability of terrorist groups through multiple and consecutive airstrikes day and night. So we're warning citizens to take care and to pay attention.
The internationally recognised government in Tripoli has blamed Haftar for the airstrike, calling him a war criminal. But an LNA official said militias allied to Tripoli shelled it.
And back here now, where Nike is facing a major backlash after canceling the release of a new sneaker that features the so-called Betsy Ross flag over its perceived link to an era of slavery. And tonight, Nike could be facing some unexpected costs. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez.
Tonight, Nike yanking this Betsy Ross flag shoe following public criticism and a direct appeal from Colin Kaepernick. The sneakers were supposed to launch Monday, but Kaepernick, one of the brand's most recognizable and controversial faces, intervened, reportedly telling execs that the design, featuring the 13 stars and stripes version of the American flag, was considered offensive to some, quote, because of its connection to an era of slavery. Conservatives immediately taking on Nike and Kaepernick. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell critical of the decision.
If we're in a political environment where the American flag has become controversial to Americans, I think we got a problem.
The intense grief and anger of Solomon Tika's family at his death has been reflected in some of the biggest nationwide protests in Israel in recent years. The 18-year-old was shot dead in the northern city of Haifa by an off-duty police officer who says he tried to break up brawling youths, but they turned against him. Other witnesses say the police officer started the confrontation. There are almost 150,000 Jews of Ethiopian descent in Israel, and at times they've complained of racial discrimination.
I have lots of friends who the police have hit and targeted with tasers. Yesterday it was him, tomorrow it could be me, and the day after it could be my brother or a friend. Why do they do this? Because they're racists.
Thousands of protesters brought traffic to a standstill in a dozen Israeli towns and cities from early evening rush hour until late into the night.
For thousands of Australians, heart failure has ruined their quality of life. Now, a team of local experts has developed a world-first procedure to treat one of the most common causes without the need for major surgery.
So the aim is to reduce the number of hospitalisations, and clearly the most important aim is to reduce their mortality.
During the procedure, cardiologists send a catheter through the groin and into an artery, arriving at the aorta in the heart's left ventricle. They then deploy a support ring before a second catheter, which is inserted through a vein, arrives at the same destination, delivering the replacement valve. As it's released inside the patient's own leaking valve, the new one expands and starts working. The team of cardiologists is hoping to perform at least another 29 procedures nationwide as part of their trial.
A sigh of relief in Brussels as the nominees for 4 of the EU's top jobs were announced after a 3-day summit that at some points looked close to collapse.
This extraordinary summit eventually ended up with important announcements and decisions and allowed us to reach a positive and consensual conclusion on all the nominations, which were at least partially under the prerogative of the European Council.
The decision to choose women for 2 of the roles was one of the summit's key talking points.
We have chosen 2 women and 2 men for the 4 key positions. A perfect gender balance. I am really happy about it. After all, Europe is a woman.
Nominated for the role of President of the European Commission, the EU's executive branch, is Ursula von der Leyen. The veteran German politician and incumbent German defence minister is a close ally of Angela Merkel.
The South Korean government is taking action against Japan's export curbs on chip supplies. Seoul announced earlier today that it plans to invest more in high-tech materials to lower its dependence on Japanese firms. Our Hong Young with the details.
South Korea's trade ministry said Wednesday it will invest around $850 million annually to develop homegrown materials and equipment to produce chips. The announcement comes after Japan said Monday it will tighten regulations on export of high-tech materials to Korea. These new items affected by the ban, including fluorinated polyamide, photoresist, and etching gas, which are used for the production of chips and displays for smartphones and TVs.
And to Mumbai now, heavy rains continue to drown Mumbai for the 6th consecutive day. As Shiv Sena defends the BMC, their negligence now stands completely exposed. India today has accessed the Comptroller and Auditor General report that slams the municipal body for being underprepared for the floods in the city once again. The report has pointed out major loopholes in the existing system for management of flood risk. While the BMC has called it climate change, the report clearly states that discrepancies in the system have led to these devastating floods. In the 10-point report, the report has said that the drainage system is heavily silted and also highlights the poor structural conditions. Meanwhile, the death toll in the city mounted to 22 after the miner who was trapped under debris of a Malad wall collapse for over 14 hours finally passed away.